Welcome to the Dave Palma Show, the podcast that revives, restores, and awakens your innermost capabilities.
You have the training and the talent to succeed, but do you have the guts to fail?
I love what I do. When you love what you do, you want to be the best at it.
Today is about the power of you. You will change the world.
Find your path to success through the journey of those who have succeeded. And now, your host, Dave Palma.
Hi, welcome back to the Dave Palma Show. And with me in this episode is an Italian-American dual citizen, effective leadership developer, transformation coach, award-winning author, and former professional American football player. Zachary Hoffman, welcome to the Dave Palma Show.
Hi, Dave. Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to today and getting to dive in deep about leadership and also, the transformations that I've, been helping athletes go through.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I'm a retired firefighter, but I also did alongside it some track in my early days of my career, which I did from school days. So, I was that good that I was like pretty much like a collegiate Division 1 track runner. That's the standard I was at. But
Wow.
I would like to hear your side because you used to be an American football player, which is obviously a bigger sport than track in America anyway, at least.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Believe it or not, a lot of track athletes end up playing American football. That's something that, I kind of experienced. But my background is, like you said, in American football. I grew up playing multiple sports in the States, baseball, basketball, And, I really took toward American football and specifically the quarterback position, which is what I played in. That is a position of leadership. And, I really enjoyed my time doing that. And, my dream ever since I was young was to make it to the highest level, the NFL. So, I kind of worked my whole life from a young boy up to, a 20-year-old for that goal. And, I didn't really have a plan B. So for me, that was really, I guess you could say I kind of went all in on that. However, there came a point in my life where it just kind of hit me all at once where I realized the situation I was currently in, playing college ball, it wasn't setting me up to get to the professional level. And I knew that, my ultimate dream was very likely not going to, come true. And for me, obviously, that was a big transformation for me. I was pretty devastated, but I knew that I had to make a big shift in my life. And I didn't know exactly what that shift was, but I just knew that it had to be drastic and I had to act now because I was heading down a path that, would have likely taken me towards success. I was getting my degree, I was doing well in school, I was doing well on the field. But I also knew that was taking me down a path toward mediocrity and just, kind of falling in line with how the rest of the world works. And I never wanted that for my life. And I knew that whatever this change was, that I had to make it now. And so that was kind of, I guess you could say, the start of my transformation. While in college, deciding, hey, the path that you're on right now isn't your ultimate destiny. So you have to make a big change. And so that's what I ended up doing.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's changes is the kind of key word to be used there, really. So basically, I know you say you have a story to share, of inspiration, of one of embracing discomfort and realization in order to achieve your full potential, and by doing that is to run towards adversity rather than running away from it. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, embracing discomfort. So for me, like I said, that time I was where I knew I had to make this big decision. I knew for me that this was going to be a decision that was going to cause a lot of discomfort and uncertainty in my life. So for me, what I meant by that is if I didn't have the courage at the point in time in my life to make that decision and, drop out of school at the time and kind of say, okay, I'm going to go home and figure this out, what my ultimate purpose is. If I didn't have the courage to make that initial decision, I would have never experienced the life overseas that I have. I would have never gotten my dual citizenship. I would have never written the book that I have. I would have never developed the business that I have. And so that one decision led to all these other aspects of my life. And I just, a lot of time, I think back and I say, what if I didn't have the courage to make that decision? What if I just said, hey, it is what it is. Just go on with life. It'll work itself out. Not to say that it would have been, any worse, but it definitely would have been different. And I don't think that I would have been able to reach my full potential and reach as many, people as I have been thankful to have reached. And so it all started from that, willingness to, kind of say, hey, I don't know what's ahead of me, but I'm ready for whatever is, and I'm ready to face the challenges. And I believe that everyone at some point in their life has a decision to make similar to this. Maybe it's not with sports, obviously, but in other aspects of life. And, some people choose to take that and they'd say, hey, I want more for my life. I know my potential. And other people say, hey, I'm just going to settle. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But, I do believe that, people with ambition, they understand their potential. However, oftentimes they're willing to, they fear seeing what their potential actually is because they know that it will be uncomfortable. They know that they're going to have to maybe end some friendships. They know that they're going to have to make decisions that are against what their family or friends think. And so they don't do it. And so for me, I feel like my story is an example of what is possible for your life if you decide to embrace adversity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Embracing adversity, and then you can kind of run with it, and then go wherever you want, kind of thing, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite interesting to say. I mean, as I say, I used to be an athlete myself, and but I was also there was an overlap where I was a firefighter, which was more my professional. I was a full-time professional in London, so it's like being a, LAFD or New York firefighter rather than volunteer out in the rurals like California or whatever. But so track and field was kind of like just a side, hustle, if you like.
Yeah.
But it did get me into doing this and some coaching like you're doing now yourself. So obviously, there are being pigeonholed just only in that field isn't really true of sports people. They have abilities elsewhere as well, don't they?
For sure. And I think the main thing is to not identify yourself with your career or your job or your sport. In my case, that was a mistake I made, and a lot of athletes I think make. They get so caught up in the moment. They see themselves having success. They dream of, achieving their full potential as an athlete. And a lot of times they, disregard their potential in other aspects of life. And a lot of athletes don't have a plan B when they finish, their career. And for me, this was always something that, I experienced myself, and I know the power that, you have as an athlete to, obviously pursue your career and do that 100%. But at the same time, know that your identity is much deeper and your potential lies much deeper than just simply the sport that you play.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's all transferable skills, and even I sort of went off academically later in my life. I mean, I had dyslexia, so I didn't really do well at school. But then I went as a mature student and had a second wind at it, or second stab at it, if you like. And it was something I was interested in, so I just did it. And the transferable skills, because I felt it was good for personal development, so I was able to, do more in terms of the skills I learned from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing that athletes, they have a lot of skills that transfer into other aspects of life in terms of leadership roles, being ambitious. Those skills are there. However, the passion often lacks in terms of their next career path. So they don't know how to transfer those skills with the same passion they had in terms of their sport. And so that's kind of what I, strive to help, former athletes and current athletes even apply the skills that they already have and find that next passion in their life. Because, as with a sport, it just takes one injury, a couple tryouts not going your way until it's over. And there's you have to live a whole, life afterwards. So transferring those skills that you already have and that you already developed through your time playing, and finding that the passion that, kind of replaced your passion for playing the sport that you played.
Yeah. And it could happen in any, not just in sports, but I mean, obviously in a firefight,
Sure.
you can get injured as well, or something can happen. You could get a sack or whatever, or you could not do the job anymore. But other people might just want to move on and do something completely different, you know, or something like that. So
Yeah,
they've
absolutely.
got to look at the skills they've got, don't they? Really?
Yeah, absolutely. And
The
just that's
games.
exactly what for what you just said is exactly right. You know, it goes for all career paths. Yeah, and it starts from, more career paths, not just as athletes, but, in other aspects of life. People who have, had success in their career and, were so 100% all in on that career. And they come to a point where they retire and maybe they're financially stable and well off. However, they lack that fulfillment that they had with their job. And most of the time, that's because they found their identity within that job. And so for me, it's really important, and something I, kind of went through myself, is to not identify yourself with your career and identify yourselves with the skills that you already have. And so you can use those skills and apply that to other aspects of life and other passions that you develop.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So tell us more about the coaching that you do then. So you're a transformational coach and also a leadership developer. So you said a bit about going in with athletes. I mean, obviously, I'm sure you also try and do this work with other people as well, or is it just purely athletes?
Yeah, so for me, I focus right now just with athletes, but really I can work with, people from all walks of life.
Yeah.
I focus on athletes because that's something I can relate to personally.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But, like you said, being a
It's your niche.
firefighter. Yeah, exactly. It's my niche.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I believe this can apply to anyone, really.
Yeah.
Really, like you mentioned before, any field. People go through transitions all the time, and it's just important to, effectively navigate that transition without, losing yourself as a person and, losing your worth and not seeing your full worth, when you finish whatever career you had. And so this applies, like you said, to all aspects. But, for me specifically, I work with, retired current athletes because that's something that I can definitely relate to.
Yeah, definitely. And that's across the board to similar sports to football, American football.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Mostly, yeah. Okay, so how do people find out more about your work, and where do they go to get in touch with you? Even
for sure,
a sports team that's listening, even here in the UK, maybe. But how do they find out?
Definitely. So the easiest way to get in touch with me is on Instagram. It's my username is Zachhoff12, so ZACHOFF12. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. It's my full name, Zachary Paul Hoffman. And I'm also at this point in time creating, it's called Athlete Evolution Academy, and it's going to be a course and, consulting services as well, to really, dive deep into this issue and really try to help these athletes use their skills and realize their full potential and, achieve their ultimate legacy as a person, not an athlete.
Yeah. Excellent, Zach. It all sounds good to me. And as I say, I can relate to it from, I started sports from 10 years old and, did the Olympic trials, stuff like that. So I know the mindset.
You know what it's all about.
Yeah, and you want to sort of do other things in your life. You don't, it's not just, it stops after a while for most sports people. And
for sure.
Absolutely. Where do we go? So it's very useful. But yeah, thanks a lot for coming and on my show and sharing all this. And really great to have you here.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate you.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening. And remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts. Or head over to my website, davepalmer.com, and click on Rate Show. Well, that's all for now, but I'll see you in the next episode of The Dave Palmer Show.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.